Hi, I'm Rachel Saint, co-founder of Property Elite and a chartered surveyor. So I help people to qualify as chartered surveyors. And I've been talking to Dan Jacob, who's a professional coach and also a chartered surveyor, about leadership and various issues that arise when we're talking about leadership from a coaching perspective. So Dan, we talked briefly our last session about communication and approachability, which is something that I know that we feel that some clients from a coaching perspective can have an issue with when they're in a senior position. Can you give them some advice on how they can overcome or improve their communication skills?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me today, Rachel. I think what's really important as a leader communicating is to make it clear to their team, to the company, this is our set of values and this is our mission. Almost this is what we're trying to achieve, but what's almost just as important is how we get there. I think a lot of companies, it's very clear about the management side of things, about doing things right, but almost bringing in the leadership and the communication of doing the right things. Are we going in the right direction? Now, as a coach, I'm gonna talk about the coaching, kind of the powers of communication with that and the benefits of it. And if we're talking on a one-to-one basis, which definitely speaks to approachability, I think a lot of companies, the head leader may communicate to the team as a whole. I've seen through maybe Zoom videos or videos throughout the whole. I think what makes it personal and makes you more approachable is when one-to-one communication, you can properly get to know each other. But I think from a coaching perspective, more than just, I think a part of communication is actually listening. They say understand to be understood. So, putting yourself in someone else's shoes, really understanding what's important to them, where they're coming from, then allows you to respond in the right way.
Yeah. So what do you think makes a good listener?
Someone who actually cares and is authentic. Mm-hmm. Someone who, is non-judgmental, absolutely, doesn't label, doesn't try and give their own advice and problem solve for someone else, but is just present in the moment and just being there for them, just trying to understand their position. And I mentioned, not problem solving, not giving your own opinion or advice, as that's the coaching way. And, as a coach or as a leader, trying to employ the coaching kind of style of communication or leadership, it's if I'm a leader and my staff member is talking about, an issue at work or at home, and I'm listening, I would ask questions to help them move forward rather than telling them what I think. Everyone's going to have an opinion, but ultimately it's their journey, and we believe they can find their own solutions. So I think listening to them, also what's not being said, the non-verbals, the tone of voice as well, and just really caring and being there for them, I think is really important.
Yeah, okay. So I wanted to just tease a few things out of that. So what I think that my concern would be that I think some people think that they might be good listeners, but actually they are maybe listening but not understanding. So how can you what advice would you give around making sure that you've really understood what the issue is that you're listening to?
Sure. So as part of, as we call it, active listening, you can reflect on what your team members has just told you. Just for clarity, say when there's a pause in your colleague's conversation, we could ask just to clarify. I hope it's okay if I reflect on what I've just heard, and then if it's right, then you're together on the same wavelength. And I think what's important as well is, I kind of alluded to it before, but when you're listening, not listening to have an answer or to say something, because then you're thinking of your answer, not what's being said. Just listening and being present. And if you have further questions, ask the questions. There's no you being worried about asking questions, so the person speaking may feel that you don't fully understand, because you truly won't understand if you have a question and don't ask. It shows you care.
Yeah, that's really, really, really useful. I'll try and remember that myself. So in terms of communication then from the employee or the team member's point of view, is there any advice that you can give to a leader around how they can encourage those skills in their employees as well? Because some people aren't naturally very communicative, and are there any tips that you could give someone around how to encourage that?
It's a really good question. And I think now we're talking about maybe bringing in a set of values, or introducing a certain environment into a company. And I think as the leader, you want to show it first and foremost. If you have team members actively seeing you being such a good listener, they may start to wonder and actually try and implement what you're doing. But in terms of introducing a better listening culture, a more understanding and less maybe judgmental culture, I would look at training. I would look at one-to-one sessions, perhaps with a coach, or even to their line manager, just discussing how they communicate. Do people ever really ask themselves, personally or at work, even on their own, just 5 minutes, how am I communicating today? What one thing could I do today that would make my conversation this afternoon go better? I don't think people really marinate on that. And I think a lot of times there's a pressure to certainly almost be, if you're from an advising role, to be the advisor and always have the answers. But sometimes just putting yourself, or understanding, a client or a team member situation, can really build that rapport and be beneficial longer term.
And do you think there's a planning element to this? So, can you plan to get more out of a conversation with someone that you're working with in your team?
Absolutely. I think being intentional in conversations, there's a power to that. I think preparation and planning is really important. I think if you don't plan, you're almost winging it or spontaneous, or you might want it to go a certain direction, but you have no real way of getting there. If you're planning before a conversation with a colleague, you want to discuss this element of work, but I also just want to get to know them better. I want to know how they're doing, so then next time you have more of a rapport, and it's nicer to work with each other longer term, which will benefit ourselves. So preparation is key. One part of preparation which I've used, and certain colleagues and clients of mine have used previously, is the power of visualization. I'm a big believer in almost visualizing exactly the situation, the outcome you want, but also yourself in the situation. By doing that allows you to almost plan your reactions, that in the moment you've actually almost been there already, and it almost feels like second nature. So I think whether it's writing a plan on a sheet of paper and having a step process of, this is my goal, this is how I'm going to get there, or a visualization process to help, I think that's really important. What about yourself, Rachel, when it comes to plan?
I perhaps wing it a bit more than I should, but I do think it is absolutely right, and it is important to try and think about what you're trying to achieve from any kind of conversation that you're having with somebody that's working within your team. But you're absolutely right in that you also need to just get to know them better, and sometimes that does flow better as a sort of unplanned conversation. But I think that there is also the question then, I'm coming on to another question to you, Dan, is how do you get to know someone but still maintain that sort of slightly the respect that you would want the team member to have for you? So i.e., you want to be their friend, but is there a limit to that friendship in that situation?
Yeah, there will be a limit, because you're in a professional environment, and you are almost who they're reporting into most of the time. So it's going to be a professional relationship, as there would be amongst colleagues. but ultimately what you put into something, you get out of something. So we spoke about preparation, where it's communicating more effectively, or maybe getting to know colleagues in a better way, and that's the more time put into it, the more you get out of it. Now, in terms of boundaries, absolutely. As a leader, you won't disclose maybe personal things that could allow your team to lose respect for you. But on the other hand, coming across in a way that is truly authentic, maybe admitting to a work issue, makes yourself seem far more approachable. Which everyone has issues. People think that the head director or the main leader doesn't have problems or can't sleep at night thinking about issues or getting nervous about a call. Absolutely, everyone does. And sharing those experiences with your team will absolutely improve your communication, how you work together.
Okay, that's so brilliant. Thank you very much. That was really, really helpful. And I look forward to talking to you again soon, Dan.
Likewise, Rachel. Thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot. Bye.